Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. It's been a while since my last news video, but PulseCon 22 just happened, so there's a lot to talk about, and a lot I'd like to cover. The Transformers segment of this year's PulseCon had a very heavy emphasis on Transformers Legacy, and then they had a couple of additional things tossed in. Now, this video is only going to cover the action figure reviews. I'm not really going to talk about like the light ride or the video game stuff, because, it's not what I collect. So, purely just talking about the toys that were revealed during this time. If you've seen my other news and rumors videos, you kind of know what to expect here. I'm going to be breaking down each one of these toys, giving my thoughts on each one. I'm going to be going in, size, class, order here. And then at the end of the video, I'll ask you guys what you think of all this. So let's go ahead and start with our core class entries. We'll get the first one out of the way here. They revealed a core class Soundblaster, which is unsurprisingly a black recolor of the Kingdom core class Soundwave toy. Still comes with a non-transforming cassette. The Soundwave had a Laserbeak cassette. This one has, I believe, Buzzsaw, which makes sense, right? Because he's just a recolor of Laserbeak. Now, this release, I'm not terribly excited for. Like, it's cool. The Soundwave core figure is a nice figure. It's one of the better, G1-based core class figures out there. But I already have it, right? This isn't really doing anything new. Plus, they've been releasing quite a few Soundblasters here in recent years. So this one, I'll get it. Sure enough, I'm going to pick it up. But it's nothing mind-blowing. Like, it's fine. It's totally cool. One thing that is interesting about this one, and makes it kind of unique, is that they gave it a purple chest window instead of a red one, like they usually do. And that's actually accurate to the Headmasters cartoon. So they're going full, animation accuracy with this one. So that is something that kind of helps it stand apart. Again, solid toy, and I do recommend it, but, I'm just kind of like, meh. Kind of knew this was coming. Not terribly exciting. Moving on to, in my opinion, more interesting entries, we get the first of the core class Dinobots. So these are recreations of your main, Generation 1 Dinobots, and they're starting out with Slag, aka Slug, and Sludge. So they're both being released in the same wave. And more or less, they just look like miniaturized versions of their G1 counterparts. They do seem to be taking some cues from their recent Studio Series releases. And just like those releases, their deco is very much based on the cartoon rather than their toy decos. Which is not very surprising. Hasbro's big focus in recent years has been cartoon accuracy, for better or for worse. For me, it kind of depends on just whichever one looks better for any given character. So, the big twist with these is that they are, like the Power of the Primes Dinobots, going to be part of a combiner. And they are going to be forming Volcanicus again. However, the combination scheme is going to be very different this time. Instead of Grimlock forming the torso and the other 4 Dinobots just forming limbs, these two together, Slag and Sludge, actually combine to form the torso. Slag being the upper part, Sludge being the lower part. As such, they do have, some extra kibble and things. They even lose their elbow articulation, which is a first. The core class toys tend to have pretty good articulation. And they said that was for structural integrity of the combiner. So, it's not ideal. Nobody wants an unarticulated brick in a 2022 or 2023 toy. But I also kind of get why they did it. They did the same thing for the Hasbro release of Combiner Wars Devastator, where some characters lost articulation to make Devastator more stable. Now, Takara didn't go that route, which made for better individual bots, but their Devastator is inherently a little bit less stable. So, depending on what your priorities are, you may or may not think that's a good move. I understand the frustration a lot of people are feeling because they're like, hey, we don't want them compromised by a combiner gimmick, we just want Dinobots. And normally I would feel that way. I felt the Power of the Primes Dinobots were very much compromised by their combining gimmick. In this case, because we are simultaneously receiving full-size Dinobots that are just pure G1 Dinobots without anything extra thrown in, I don't mind the core classes doing something a little different. It does help mix things up a little bit rather than just buying, a big version and a little version that are pretty much the same thing. So I don't mind it too much, and this really new spin of Volcanicus is interesting. Now, we haven't even addressed the elephant in the room, or in this case, the Ankylosaurus in the room. So as the 2-bot torso has alluded to, and Hasbro themselves even stated during the stream, this is going to be a 6-bot combiner. So you got to wonder, well, where's the 6th Dinobot come from? You know, is it Slash again? Not likely. Most likely, it's going to be a character called Scar, based on some leaked listings. It was a core class Scar. Now, Scar is the name of a Power Master partner of Double Dealer, but it was also the name of an IDW Comics character, one of the original Dinobots that got killed off like early on in the war, before they ever even assumed Dino modes or anything. And he was just a character named Scar. And, you know, he was more or less just a plot device to, like, give the Dinobots, you know, some internal conflict. Now, Scar never had a beast mode, right? They never assumed beast modes. Or if he did have one, they never showed it. But the common belief right now is that the Scar will turn into an Ankylosaurus. And the reason people think that is when you look at the makeup of this team, it being a 6-bot combiner, you might think, well, what other, you know, dinosaur combiner team had 6 members and had this particular layout? And we go back to Japanese G1 Dino King from Transformers Victory. For anyone not very familiar, Dino King was a Japanese exclusive recolor of the G1 combiner Monstructor. He was really interesting and unique because all of his components were actually pretenders. They were very small pretender toys. And, you know, they all had these monster-like beast modes, and then they had monster-like pretender shells. With Dino King, they kept, you know, the base figures the same, but they gave them completely new pretender shells that looked like cyborg dinosaurs. Primarily green in color, with like silver, you know, metal attachments and stuff. So completely new pretender shells. And these guys would just kind of hide out in these dinosaur shells. Well, those shells, you know, they matched the layout of the original Dinobots, right? You had your T-Rex looking character, your Brontosaurus, Triceratops looking character, Stegosaurus, your Pterodactyl-like character, but then they initially had an Ankylosaurus character. So the thinking right now is that this set is eventually going to be recolored and hopefully retooled into a new take on Dino King. Now, nothing's guaranteed, but they were hinting at reusing, you know, this team at least once. They said that was the reasoning for making it a 6-bot combiner, so that they could do something else with it down the road. And that's the one that just makes the most sense. Unless they're just doing like a G2 coloration or something. Now, I have mixed feelings on this. I love the idea of having a Dino King. I mean, imagine tracking down original, you know, JG1 Dino King right now. You'd probably pay a small fortune for it. So getting some kind of update is nice. It is nice that they would, in theory, have all 6 members. You know, have all the original members. Unlike the Combiner Wars Lio Kaiser, that was very heavily compromised by being a retool. But at the same time, it's not going to be a very faithful update. You know, the dinosaur modes are just going to be their beast modes rather than a pretender shell that they climb into. So it is going to look very different from how Dino King normally looks. The one big similarity, I guess you could say, is when you look at the torso mode that Slag and Sludge form, you have Slag's Triceratops head being right there on the chest of the combiner, which is very similar to how Dino King looked in the cartoon, where his chest plate resembled that of a horned beast. So on some levels it'll work, you know, have some similarities, but I think it's still going to be kind of a far cry from, you know, an actual like one-for-one update. So I am a little bit disappointed that it's not going to be a bit truer to the original Dino King. It doesn't mean we won't get one down the road. If anything, this means, you know, they'll get that trademark on there, but it also means they won't feel the need to be in a hurry to make another one, because they'll be like, hey, we gave you guys Dino King. That's kind of their thought process with Lio Kaiser. Like, hey, we just gave you a Lio Kaiser. I mean, nobody's happy with it, but we gave you one, so why are you complaining? So, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to get it. I'm totally going to. How can I turn down a Dino King? A lot of people are saying, like, oh, and maybe they'll recolor that in a Monstructor. I mean, I hope not, because then that'll be really off the mark, because Monstructor had nothing to do with dinosaurs. So really, like, if they want to do this in a Dino King, I think that's fine. But I think they should tackle Monstructor individually somewhere else, either down the road on the retail side of things. Maybe make it a HasLab. I think Monstructor would be, you know, a good option for a HasLab, as long as they go, like, you know, full bore, like pretender shells and everything, to make it something really special. And then you could always recolor that into Dino King. So, I don't know. We'll see what they do there. So sorry, I spent a lot of time in the core class, but there is a lot to talk about with those two Dinobots because there's just a lot of buzz about them right now. All right, moving on to our Deluxe Class figures. This one for me is a bit of a mixed bag. I'll start with the ones I like, and I'll tackle the one I'm not crazy about last. So starting out, we have a nice update of Armada Hotshot, which we kind of knew was coming. We saw the leaked listings and everything. So this is meant to be a very faithful update to the Armada design. Just, you know, great articulation, everything, better proportions. He does still have that engine block blaster that the old toy had. And he does still have, what did Mark call it? Like his axle Zuka or wheel Zuka or something like that. Where, you know, basically the rear axle of the car flips up, like turns around, and it's like this back-mounted bazooka. Now, originally, that feature was activated with a Minicon connection, right, where Minicon would power links to Hotshot. And as you may have guessed, this does not come with Hotshot's Minicon Jolt, because apparently a deluxe toy with a Minicon is just not in the budget anymore. So, yay. But he does at least have a Minicon port on the back of the car mode, unlike the previously revealed Armada Starscream, so at least they're trying to do something. I mean, even Metroplex can have Minicon ports. So it's a step in the right direction. Still doesn't feel great not having his Minicon, but if you have the original, you could at least attach that Jolt to this one, even if it won't activate anything. So I think as an update, it's nice. Got some good looking posability. I'm not crazy about the very empty inner legs there. That does not look great. But everything else about the toy does look a lot better than the original. Now, I've heard some people say they actually prefer the Transformers Universe Hotshot more. I've never owned that toy. I've never handled it, so I can't really compare it. That one did at least include Jolt, so maybe that one was a better toy. But for anyone that maybe doesn't have that version, I think this will be a pretty nice update. And again, you could always just attach your old Jolt toy to it if you really want to have that. So not ideal, but most of the way there. While we're on the subject of Deluxe Class figures with partners, they also revealed an update to Generation 1 Needlenose. Now, this one has been a long time coming, right? He popped up in old fan polls and everything, and he never won. But you could tell Hasbro really wanted to make him, so he's been cooking for quite a while. And they finally released him. This is a very Generation 1 faithful reinterpretation of Needlenose. In fact, this is the first update he's received outside of a club exclusive. And he's far more accurate to the old design than that exclusive was, because that was just a recolored Binary Wars Aerial Bot toy. So yeah, he looks really good. He does include both of his Targetmaster partners. They have been very much simplified compared to what we saw in War for Seibertron. They appear to just be a static one-piece robot with a little flip-out, you know, gun barrel on the back. And, you know, it does feel like a step back, but it's not surprising. Like, they wouldn't even sell this guy with one fully articulated Targetmaster partner, let alone two. Like, those days they're just behind us. So, you know, it's better that he gets them than doesn't get them at all. But it is going to be a little weird because, you know, just like Point Blank figure coming in Wave 3 of Legacy, they just feel very much reduced to keep the toy within that deluxe budget. And I am very torn on that. On the one hand, I'd almost prefer them just sell them at a Voyager price, or maybe its own price point as like a special, you know, set or something, than have to cut so many corners to get the budget right, because they are going to feel very lacking compared to some of the more recently released Targetmasters. Now, I will say, outside of that little pet peeve of just having the simplified Targetmasters, I think Needlenose came out very well. I think they did a much better job on him than they did with Point Blank. I think the Point Blank toy looks like hot garbage, honestly, and, you know, is very lacking in things like articulation, and it's very empty. I don't like it. But this guy, for Needlenose himself, looks great. And while the Targetmasters are very simple, they are very faithful to their old design. So, you know, there's that. And they're well painted. So I don't hate it. I think it's going to be a good toy, and I know a lot of people have really been wanting this guy for a long time. So I'm more or less happy with it. Now to look at probably the most surprising reveal during this live stream, we get a new Junkion character in the form of Scraphook, who turns into this like Mad Max style tow truck thing. And what's really interesting about this guy is that he's basically a weaponizer. So, you know, they've been messing with the concept for a while, right? They started in Siege with the actual weaponizers. Then they moved on to modulators, who turned into bases and stuff, but still could break apart into armor and weapons. And then they had the fossilizers, which were skeletal dinosaurs that broke apart and turned into armor weapons. This, however, I think they finally found the right niche for these modular characters. Because Junkions have always been known to be able to take themselves apart, rebuild themselves at will, and even augment their allies with their own body parts. So this is really perfect, and it's a really good way to get some returning Junkion characters, as well as creating entirely new ones like Scraphook here, while not feeling out of place. He just looks like another Junkion who's never been given an official toy before. So I actually love this idea. I think they have finally found the perfect place for characters like this. Now, one thing that's really cool about this guy is that unlike all of those other modular characters that have been coming out since War for Seibertron, you do not need to take this guy apart to transform him. He's not, a Lego set. He is a fully fledged transformer, goes from A to B without having to be disassembled. And then, separately, you can also take him apart and turn him into armor and weapons for other characters. I think that's amazing. I think they're going to go really far with this concept, and whoever came up with the idea, kudos to them, because historically your modulators, fossilizers, all that, they haven't sold very well. They're one of the first figures to peg warm because they do feel kind of out of place amongst all these other more famous G1 characters. But I think people are going to go nuts for these various Junkions, because Junkions, just by default, are army builders, and they're just really cool to fill out a scene. I think they really struck gold with this, and I love the way Scraphook looks. He's really, really cool looking. So I love this. Easily one of my favorite reveals, and I'm really curious to see how much more they're going to do with this concept and how far they're going to take it, because this right here is creativity at its finest. So yeah, huge fan of this. Now, coming off that high, we're going to go to the lowest of lows for me during this whole reveal. And this is the 5th and final Stunticon to be released in Legacy, Breakdown. And why do I dislike this guy so much? Well, he's a simple retool of Wild Rider. And there's some people that are completely not bothered by that, and if you're happy with it, I'm very happy for you. I really am. Anytime you get a figure you like in your collection, you are winning this hobby. But they set a standard, right? They really set the bar very high with these Stunticons, where each one of them, up to this point, was its own unique mold, had a very unique and interesting transformation, a very unique way of combining with Menasor. And even though I do not like the direction they went with the whole super robot with cars slapped on his limbs thing, I can appreciate the engineering and everything that went into it, and it is a cool concept. And I was really, pumped to see how they were going to do the final Stunticon. And I have to say, this feels like a real bait and switch, right? It seems like they intentionally waited to reveal this guy last, so that you were already 3 or 4 bots into your combiner, and then when they revealed this one, a lot of people are like, oh, I hate this, but, screw it, I'm already most of the way there, may as well finish it. So it feels scummy to me. I don't like it. Normally I don't assume the worst in people, but this really feels like they just waited and waited to show this guy off because they knew people were going to be like, whoa, seriously? And there's a lot of issues with this. One, it's the wrong car mode. Wild Rider historically turned into a Ferrari, which is what the Legacy toy is based off of. Not a licensed Ferrari, obviously, but it more or less looks like that body type. And then Breakdown was supposed to turn into a Lamborghini Countach, like the same car that Sideswipe and Sunstreaker turn into. So his alt mode should look like them. And aside from some minor retooling on the very back of the car, it doesn't look anything like a Countach. It's just a Ferrari. It's a modified Ferrari. So it's already the wrong car mode, which normally I wouldn't get too hung up on, honestly, because I'm not a big car guy. But again, when they've gone to such great lengths to make all these unique molds for this combiner that were so specialized, and then seemingly just kind of drop the ball here with this final car mode, it does feel off. And then, of course, that also means that the robot mode is just a retooling of Wild Rider. Now, they do have some new bits to differentiate him. It is a new head, it's a new chest piece, and then like the little waist area, the belt area is a new piece. But then that's it. Everything else is Wild Rider through and through. And I could honestly forgive this more if they had remolded more of the robot details to better match Breakdown, but they didn't. This feels very phoned in. I don't like it. And we also have to talk about this whole issue with the spoiler. So like the other Stunticons, he comes with 2 of his little blasters to mimic the original toy that had like the big, double-barreled cannon thing on the back. And that's not what I have a problem with. I like the little dual-wielding pistol thing they're doing here. Really kind of plays in this very cavalier, cowboy-like attitude that the Stunticons have. Well, this new molding comes with a separate spoiler piece to plug on to the back of the car to make it a little bit closer to how Breakdown should look, because he should have a spoiler. The problem is, it plugs into the only 2 ports that are available in the vehicle mode, which means if you have the spoiler attached, you have nowhere to place his weapons in vehicle mode. You just have to leave them off entirely. Terrible design. Like, I can't believe they thought that was fine. Like, oh, well, you can choose between a spoiler or weapons and you can't have both. Really just seems like a step backwards there. Then, when you get into robot mode, the spoiler is one solid piece. Doesn't break in half and like neatly store on the back of his legs or anything. It is one cheap looking piece. And it has 2 5mm ports like on the sides. So, even if you have him hold the thing, it's not centered at all. They say you can like attach it to one of his guns and make it look like an axe, and I've seen this quote-unquote axe mode they're talking about. It just looks terrible. It's just him holding a car spoiler, and it looks really bad. There's no good storage for it. I know I saw some in-hand images of somebody who stole a copy. Just gonna come out and say that. They were like slapping on the back of one of his legs. Well, I mean, it's so big, now he can't bend his leg. It's just a terrible design. It really is. This feels so copy and paste, so cheap. It's almost like a fan mod, and I don't like it. I think they really dropped the ball. And it was already on a combiner that I was pretty lukewarm about, because I hated the fact that they dropped the whole Scramble City feature. I hate the fact that this thing will not be compatible with any other combiners. And then they do that. And honestly, it all makes sense now, because when I was reviewing Motormaster, I noticed that the fake like car undercarriage panels on the shins that were meant to mimic the molded details of the toys, they were the same on both legs. And I thought, hey, they're either messed up and they accidentally just gave them the same design on both legs, and you're gonna have one design that doesn't actually match the other side of the car, or maybe they were just really, really clever with how they made Breakdown, and they made him in a way to where his underside will match Wild Rider's while still being a separate mold. Well, now we know the reason why it looks the same. It's because it's the same toy. So, man, is that rough. You know what I mean? Like, 4/5 of the way there, and then they just cop out at the very end. And I hate it. I feel so cheated right now by this. Because again, already I'm like begrudgingly giving this thing a chance and trying to like it. And then they're like, oh yeah, here's Breakdown or something. I don't know, here you go. There's your combiner, guys. Like, I hate it. I really do. And it has me a little worried about future combiners. Now, a lot of people will rightfully say, well, Combiner Wars reused a lot of molds all the time, and they did. But rarely did they use the same mold twice within a combiner. When you look at all the Combiner Wars Stunticons, as bad as they may have been, they were all a unique mold. Now, I'm not counting Wild Rider / Breakneck because he originally wasn't part of that team, right? They substituted him out with a pickup truck named Off-Road, and Takara only reintroduced him later by doing like a quick head swap. But I'm talking like original, as released members. Superion, all unique molds. Defensor, all unique molds. In fact, I think all of the retail released combiners had all unique molds. Now, when you start kind of getting out in the weeds with your selects or platinum editions, Lio Kaiser technically reused the Brawl body twice, but at least, those had very different tooling between them. And yeah, it has me concerned, right? Like, what are they gonna do when it comes time for Superion? Are all the jets gonna look the same, like all the limbs just gonna be the same jet with some robot retooling? Like, or maybe, maybe 2 of the same for each. They're gonna go the Energon style with that. I don't know. But if they can't do this better, based on their current budgeting, I don't know if combiners really have a very bright future here in Legacy, and whatever comes beyond. It has me concerned, and I feel very much let down by this release. Okay, I know it's very negative, but you guys know me, I'm always very honest about how I feel about these things. Now it's time to move into the realm of just pure, unadulterated awesomeness. We get to our Voyager figures, and these are two figures that I have been waiting on for a very long time. We'll start with the first one. They're doing a new Lio Convoy, and this is something that had been rumored based on some insider leaks and things like that. But yeah, this is a fully realized Generations update to Lio Convoy. They are, however, calling him Leo Prime now, like they have done for like Transformers Universe and all that. Personally, I hate the renaming. I don't know why they feel the need to do that. I'm sure they can just call him Lio Convoy and it'll be fine, and would help separate him and ease confusion, because he's not actually a Prime. He's more akin to Optimus Primal than he is a Prime. But whatever, like, who cares about the name? You can call him whatever you want. Really, really nice update. And one thing I love about this guy is that he retains, through somewhat different means, but overall retains the original gimmicks and features of the old Lio Convoy toy. He's got the main with the flip out, blasters or cannons or whatever. He has his weapons. He's got the little Energon matrix in the chest. He's got the flip out battle claws under his arms. And he just looks really good. He's well articulated. The one thing I'm not crazy about, and I have heard other people mention it, I think the lion face is a little underwhelming. It kind of just has this dead-eyed expression, has not much personality to it, and the eyes are just a solid plastic color, and it's the same plastic color that's used on the main. Now, according to the box art, apparently that's supposed to look like he has golden glowing eyes, but it doesn't really look that way in person. It looks like they just forgot to paint the eyeballs or something. He would look much better if they painted some pupils on there, or just painted the entire eye a much brighter gold color to make it actually look like they're glowing. Instead, the lion face does look a bit unfinished, and I feel there's definitely room for improvement there. Now, it's probably too late for them to do anything about it. I'm sure production's already begun on these, which is a shame, because that tiny little, just a little dot or slash or something on each of the eyes to make them look like actually eyes would be enough, in my opinion. The lion face is pretty weak, I will say. But aside from that one blemish, I think everything about this guy is great. I think he looks amazing. Everything I would hope for in a modern update to Lio Convoy. So I'm good with this. Now, for the real kicker. No, not that one. Jeez, not that one. We are getting our first official release of a fully transformable IDW Comics Tarn. The big bad of the DJD himself is actually getting a toy made. And I didn't think they were ever going to do this, because of the very mature and very dark and brutal personality of the Decepticon Justice Division, right? They're basically Inquisitors, and Inquisitors, they do what they do through some very unpleasant means. These guys will brutally kill, torture, whatever, any Decepticon deserters, and Tarn's the leader of those guys. So yeah, they are doing a Tarn, and it looks amazing. This guy, in my opinion, is kind of the next year's version of the G-Axis toy that we got this year, where he was a Voyager, representation of a relatively obscure comic character, obscure, I guess, in a casual sense, and then just done so perfectly. No hollow bits, articulated hands, the whole 9 yards there. So a lot of people have been likening this guy to the G-Axis figure, and I think for good reason, because you can tell a lot of budget and a lot of care went into making these guys just perfect. We're finally getting this guy in toy form, and I couldn't ask for anything more. The tank mode looks great. Looks like it came right out of the comics. The robot mode looks just like Alex Milne's drawings. I mean, yes, there is so much yes here. The excitement around this guy is palpable in the collector community. And I gotta say, he looks perfect. Maybe the one only way they can make this better is if his mask was detachable. But honestly, I would be surprised if they went that far. As cool as it would be to actually get Glitch's face underneath, I know that's a bit beyond the scope for Voyager Class, especially with how much budget they put into making this guy very complete looking. Now, maybe we'll get some other release down the road. Maybe they'll do a Selects Edition or something with the mask removed. Maybe they'll release him as Glitch with like a new color scheme or something. There's been a lot of speculation that this mold might be the basis for the new Voyager Class Bludgeon that's supposed to be coming sometime next year. And I can see that. I think he would be the most likely candidate for a Bludgeon. Plus, he does very much resemble Bludgeon's new IDW design, which is much more mechanical and less Pretender-like. So, probably what's going to happen. I won't be as thrilled about the Bludgeon as this guy, because that means the Bludgeon will be far less accurate to his source material. But it'll still be a good toy, because this, as we can see, is a very good-looking toy. So, yes, maximum hype around Tarn. And honestly don't even think I need to keep going on about it, because if you know Tarn and you care about him, you're already super hyped about this. Don't need me to tell you how good this is going to be. Okay, so that is it for the Legacy reveals. You might be wondering what happened to Leader or Commander. Well, they don't have any ready yet. They actually talked about it, and they said that due to delays with COVID-19, they don't have any new Leader class toys coming in Wave 1, which is a huge letdown. So it's going to be just re-releases of Leaders from this year's Legacy. I know one of them is going to be Dragon Megatron. I don't remember what the other one's going to be. Which, on the one hand, it'll be good, because Dragon Megatron being kind of a tail ender this year will probably be kind of hard to find. So it's probably a good thing that you'll get another shot at him. I don't know if he's going to get a packaging refresh or if he'll just be released in the same packaging. Oh yeah, by the way, they touched on Breakdown. They're actually going to release him in regular Legacy packaging instead of the new Evolution stuff, just so that his box matches the other Stunticons. So I can see them releasing the Dragon Megatron in the same packaging next year. And then, whoever else he gets released alongside. So that is disappointing news. You would hope to see some new Leader figures by early 2023, but it looks like that's just not going to happen. Which, maybe that's good. My bank account could use a break, honestly. So many reveals, so many releases. And then as far as Commander and Titan, they usually don't reveal those guys with the Wave 1 reveals for a new line. That usually comes a bit later in the year, and then they usually end up releasing around mid-year or so. So I wasn't expecting to see those yet anyway. But if we look at the official artwork for Legacy Evolution, I think we know what we're going to get. Because if you look at the very, very top, we have none other than Transformers Armada Optimus Prime emerging through a portal. And that is a toy that you could not do properly at anything less than a Commander price point, because of how intricate his trailer is. And that has been the big thing since Kingdom, right? Is Commanders have been some sort of like truck or car-based Voyager-sized bot with an intricate trailer. And sometimes they can combine with it, like in Motormaster's case. So this does seem to be very much in that same school of thought. And I think it's going to be great. Hopefully the trailer lower half of the super mode will be articulated like the original. That was very much compromised by the whole auto-transforming gimmick. I would love a modern, articulated monster convoy, aka Armada Optimus. And I know people have been asking for it since that old prototype was shown off some years ago. So, if that is what's coming, I'm very happy with that. I love the Armada Optimus design. So, bring that on. Now, when it comes to the Titan, they keep hinting, and they have been hinting ever since the art came out, that a Titan-class Nemesis is coming, like the Decepticon ship. And you can see it up here in the corner of the poster, and they keep teasing it, right? It showed up on the ARC's packaging, and it also showed up on the most recent Titan Metroplex's packaging. So they really seem to just be hyping this thing up. Now, I wasn't super crazy with the ARC Titan, specifically the actual ARC mode, the vehicle mode, because it had these big old gaping holes on the side. I felt that was a bit lacking and was very much compromised by budget cuts. Hopefully the Nemesis fares a little better. And there's some speculation that this face, right in the middle of the poster, that while it does kind of resemble Tarn's face, looking like a Decepticon symbol, there's also some details that really don't line up with Tarn. Now, they might just be some, flourishing from the artist. But a lot of people are speculating, and they even kind of hinted that there was, more than meets the eye there, but that this isn't actually Tarn's face, which could mean it's probably the face of the Nemesis Titan, which would be a nice touch, right? The ARC Titan was based off of the character, the last Autobot from the Marvel Comics, and his face was itself based primarily on the Autobot symbol. So it would make sense that a Nemesis Titan would have a face that resembles the Decepticon logo. So I think that's what they're going for. And, you know, of course there's other Titans I'd prefer to see made first. But since you did the arc, you kind of have to do the Nemesis now. And I think this is a good year for it, so I'm okay with it as long as it comes out well. Alright, so that does it for the Legacy reveals. That was kind of the meat and potatoes of this whole live stream. And there are a few more figures to look at. Now, the first batch, they're not a new reveal, but this is the first time that they're being made available for pre-order. And I haven't talked about them before, so I'll just cover it real quick. So we have the Hero is Born 2-pack, which features Orion Pax and Alpha Trion. Now, the Orion Pax toy is, unsurprisingly, a retool of the Studio Series 86 Cup. And this is actually the third time that an Orion Pax has been made from a Cup toy. The original was an eHobby exclusive back in the day, which was a retool of the Generation 1 Cup figure. That kind of set the whole precedent because there are some aesthetic similarities between the two. And then you had this like weird Amazon special release that had a Titans Return retool into Orion Pax, and then a War for Seibertron video game Optimus Prime. Like very, very random pack. It's supposed to be like an evolution of the character, but it was kind of all over the place aesthetically. This, I think, is the best attempt at creating an Orion Pax from Cup. Now, in recent years, we also had a few other Orion Pax toys made. One was a completely unique look for the character that was released during Thrilling 30, and it was based on his IDW incarnation, and as such looked very different from previous Orion Pax depictions. And then we had a very Sunbow G1 cartoon-based Orion Pax released during Power of the Primes as the cab/core robot of the Leader Class Optimus Prime. And that one was, very accurate looking to the cartoon, but it wasn't really a great toy. It had like a really terrible alt mode. This, I think, satisfies all the criteria much better. Where, yeah, it's a retool, but it's a decent enough retool to look a lot like the cartoon character and still, have a good alt mode in the form of Cup's alt mode. Then we get to Alpha Trion. This is the third official Alpha Trion, Transformer we've received. The first one came out in Titans Return, and it was a really interesting reimagining of Alpha Trion as this lion-based triple-changing warrior type, which is still a great figure, by the way. Even though it may not be everybody's cup of tea, I think it's just great for what it is. And then we received a very simple Alpha Trion figure during the Cyberverse toy line, and he transformed into this hover ship-like vehicle. And that seems to have set a precedent because the new Alpha Trion is a heavy retool of Studio Series 86 Scourge. So he also turns into some sort of little hovercraft thing. Now, the retooling on him is actually quite extensive and really does a great job of looking like the Generation 1 cartoon character. Now, of course, he's got a lot of extra back kibble and stuff that Alpha Trion didn't have because he actually has to transform. But I am more than satisfied with, the way this came out. And even though I already have, a few Orion Pax toys, and I have, that Titans Return Alpha Trion, I'm excited to pick this up because I think these are some of the best, if not the best, interpretations of both those characters ever. Now, the funny thing is that Orion Pax, being a Cup retool, means he does also fall apart like Cup. So, I guess you can kind of play that into the whole him getting, mortally wounded by Megatron before being saved. But it is kind of a weird thing to leave in there. Though, retooling that out would have been very costly. The one thing I actually do find really weird is that he comes with a little Energon goodie thing that Cup had, which there's really no precedent for that. I guess just part of the mold, so they included it. And they also do include a new recreation of Vector Sigma, aka a gold disco ball. And the last Vector Sigma toy we got was, I believe, the one that came with a special release of the MP10 Optimus Prime back in the day. I think it was the last time we got one of those, and it actually had a key to Vector Sigma you could plug into it. So overall, very nice set. Definitely looking forward to picking this up. Now lastly, we're going to wrap this up with the final reveal, and that was for the presumably final Shattered Glass figure, unless they make a third series. And this was the highly anticipated Shattered Glass Soundwave. Now he is, thankfully, a retool of the Netflix Soundwave, which means he retains his boombox alt mode instead of turning into a wonky spaceship thing. So that puts him much more in line with the eHobby Shattered Glass Soundwave than the BotCon one that actually was, I think, an Ironhide retool, right? Which I'm okay with. At least there's a precedent for the SG Soundwave turning into a boombox at some point. So this toy is done up in those SG colors, which look really nice on it. And it does have a remolded head that actually has his signature green headband molded in. Now, on the one side, that does mean the headband is, kind of flush up against his head, and the tail end of it's, shortened because it's got to fit inside of, the body cavity and everything. But I think this is honestly the best way to go, because that means you don't have to have, a separate accessory just kind of sitting around when he's in boombox mode, and it's not made of paper like it was on the eHobby, which means it's, going to last longer. So, I think it's a good call. Yeah, it's a compromise that had to be made, but I think overall it was the right choice. And just like the Netflix Soundwave, this guy does come with two partners. He comes with Laserbeak and Ravage. I know, Shatterglass Ravage is a pretty popular character because he was so prominently featured in the Shattered Glass mythos and, side stories and stuff, and just had a lot of personality about him. And then Laserbeak, he wasn't, a really big player, but, it just makes sense that they have the molding there. Now, the weird thing is that Laserbeak is actually the Seibertronian version, the one with the visor face instead of eyes. I don't know why they went that route. That was kind of a weird choice. I am a little sad that the future of Shattered Glass is kind of in limbo right now, because I think the Shattered Glass comic series is the last thing IDW is going to do for Transformers before their license is gone. After that, I don't know if the series will get picked up by whatever new publisher takes over. I don't know if it can be legally. This may be the end of Shattered Glass, and I think it's a shame because they've released some pretty good figures in the subline. And there were some other characters I was kind of hoping they'd get to before they, put the fork in this thing. But if they are, ending Shattered Glass, it at least went out on a high note. A lot of people like SG Soundwave, very popular character from that series, so I'm looking forward to picking this guy up. And that's all of it. As far as toy reveals, that's everything they cover for Transformers. And overall, I'm very happy with what I saw. I'm honestly more excited for this next year of Legacy so far than I was the first year. The first year, I don't know, it didn't grab me like a lot of the Prime Wars trilogy did. It had some great figures in it, but also had some that I just, I was like, oh, those are meh. They're kind of whatever. The Breakdown, I already said I'm very disappointed with, but I think Breakdown was really just kind of a holdover from the first year anyway, and he just didn't make it out, within that first year, so he got bumped back. So I'm not really even counting him. He's not really a new mold or anything. Everything else, I'm very happy with. Even the Soundblaster, it is what it is, but it's not a bad toy by any means. Just not anything new or exciting. But it's totally fine. The whole, potential Dino King coming from Dinobots, I think is great. Most of the deluxes, I think, are really well done, even if some of them are a little bit compromised by the price point. And then the Voyagers are just a dream come true. I mean, they really are. Two characters. One, I figured we might get an update someday, but it has been a long time coming. And the other one, I wasn't sure we were ever going to get in, official transforming plastic form. Super 7 was doing their own Tarn. That's set to come out, I think, late this year or next year. But it was a non-transforming figure. This, to me, is the better option. The only downside, I guess, is he doesn't come with nickel like the Super 7 one does. But that nickel was just a static piece anyway, so you're not missing too much. And then, of course, the two releases on the end there. I think they're both pretty solid. I'm definitely looking forward to that Alpha Trion and Orion 2-pack. That just looks really, really cool. And, yeah, overall, it was a very exciting event. Some of the best toy reveals we've had in a while. And while everything didn't, totally knock it out of the park, we definitely had far more hits than misses. So I thought it was really exciting. Can't wait to see what else they do with Legacy and beyond this year, because 2023, it's looking like they're kind of getting back on their feet after COVID kind of just, knocked everyone for a loop there. Seems like everything's getting back on track now for the most part. I mean, leaders are still delayed, but it feels like they're really, dare I say, evolving. So, yeah, I think the name's very fitting, because it looks like we're really starting to gain some traction Legacy now, and I really appreciate that. Alright, so I've said my whole piece, I've shared my thoughts, and I want to know what you guys thought of this reveal. Were you happy with what got revealed? Were you disappointed with what didn't get revealed? I know Studio Series didn't really get any representation at all. They didn't cover Earthspark for anyone that's excited about that. But, if you were here for legacy content, I think you were more than covered. So, go ahead, after you watch this, just respond to the comments, let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's any other news or anything you want me to cover or get my thoughts on. And with all that said, I will see you next time.